here on a status hearing. Ms. Ferguson, I assume you're covering for Ms. Schulte today, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, all right, welcome to you.
Thank you.
All right, CASA is with us. Mr. Pirtle is with us representing the child. Mr. Barfield is with us representing the mother, Ms. Sarmiento. I don't see her, Mr. Barfield. Were you expecting her?
No, sir, not really. No, we would love contact information. Anybody knows how, we can deal with that later in the hearing.
Okay, thank you. All right, and the alleged father, Mr. White Wolf, is not with us either. Okay, you may proceed, Ms. Ferguson.
Pamela Ferguson, Regional Attorney representing the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. I'm present and ready with Permanency Specialist Andrea Gollahue from St. Francis Ministries.
Okay, Ms. Gollahue, if you'd raise your right hand, please. You swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Ms. Ferguson, you may proceed.
How are you familiar with this case?
I am the specialist that's working the case.
And how old is this child?
She is 3 or 1. She's 1. I am sorry. I'm getting 2 cases mixed up. She is 1. I got 2 cases at the same time.
Do you need a minute to look at your permanency report?
I have it up. Give me
Okay.
just a second.
And how did, just briefly, how did she come to be in the care of the department?
She was abandoned in a trailer home by herself for approximately 15 hours.
Okay. And that resulted in an adversary hearing where she came into the care of the department. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been able to speak with Heaven Sarmiento?
No, I haven't.
Okay. And what efforts have you made to try to locate her?
We have a parent support specialist who has tried to track her down. She's currently on the run. And so the parent support worker has had contact, but very little.
Okay. And did you file an affidavit asking this court for permission to serve her by publication?
No, but I can.
Well, did the department do that?
They might have.
Okay. If I said she was served by publication in February, would you have any reason to disagree with that?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. And since she was served by publication, what other searches have you run?
She was in contact with, again, my parent support worker. She gave us the idea that she was being, so they contacted Homeland Security, Mr. Bacon, I think. And then when Heaven found that out, she contacted our parent support worker back and said, no, she wasn't being trafficked. But at that moment, she was still in Killeen and they were moving towns every 2 days.
Okay. But she has been in contact with St. Francis, is that correct?
Yes.
Do we have any reason to fear for her safety at this time?
No.
Okay. Were you able to create a service plan for Ms. Sarmiento?
Yes.
And what services has she been asked to do?
She's been asked to do the regular steady employment, steady housing, drug-free. And then she's asked to do some RBT, which is random behavior thought process, I think.
Who is she doing rational behavior therapy with?
I think we put on here Troy Timmons.
Okay. Okay. And has she been asked to do individual counseling?
Yes. So she's got to comply with all the requirements of the original family plan of service and any amendments that service plan might need from service providers. And she will provide this information to St. Francis within 5 days of any changes in residence, phone number, or employment. She has to stay in contact with her caseworker, who is me, Andrea Gollahue, by phone. My phone number's on here, my email address, my physical work address.
Let me stop you there. Has she contacted you at all during this case?
No,
When she was in contact with the HST, have you noted that it was documented that she was provided with your phone number?
yes,
Okay, so she knows how to contact you if she needs to.
she should.
Okay, and what about drug and alcohol assessment and random drug testing? Is that also being requested?
Yes, ma'am.
And also a psychosocial, is that correct?
Yes,
And is that being requested through the same person who is doing her individual counseling?
it can be.
Have you been able to inform her that she has a service plan?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Do you have an address to send it to?
I have the last known address, but again, she is running around Texas, but yes, I have an address that is in Hereford.
Okay, but it's fair to say that you're not sure that that address would actually reach her.
Correct.
Has the service plan been filed for record and her attorney have a copy of it?
I believe so.
Okay. Let's talk about Mr. White Wolf. Is he an alleged father currently?
Yes.
Is the department going to ask him to take a paternity test if located?
Yes.
Have you been able to locate him?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about that.
His mom called me, Michelle,
Okay.
White Wolf, and I got her in touch with Tessa Lone Wolf, and let her know that yes, there is a child here. I'm assuming she got my number from the parent support worker, because she called me and said that her son lives with her. And that information's been passed on to Tessa. And then I gave Michelle White Wolf information about who she needed to contact.
So have you actually been in contact with Mr. Devin White Wolf at all?
No.
Okay.
But
And-
she says he lives with her, so.
Okay. But he has not contacted the department. Is that correct?
No, he hasn't. But a parent support worker, Sarah Campbell, has reached out to him, and it's my understanding that they'll be speaking and getting evaluations to see. But Miss Michelle White Wolf said that she would prefer a DNA because they're not really sure if the child belongs to Devin or not.
Okay. So he's gonna, the department has reason to believe he's gonna request a paternity test. Is that correct? Okay. In addition to that, have you created a service plan for Mr. White Wolf?
I am in the works of it, and it will say pertaining to paternity test results.
Did you file a permanency report with this court?
I thought it was
Or a status report? I apologize.
yes.
Okay. In your court report, did you list services that you're going to ask Mr. White Wolf to do?
Yes.
Are you asking the court to order those services today?
Yes.
Okay. And those services include, they're very similar to the ones requested of Mrs. Sarmiento. Is that correct?
Yes.
So stay in contact with the department, have stable housing, employment, go to individual counseling, do a drug and alcohol assessment, follow up with random drug testing, go have a psychosocial and rational behavior therapy as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
And why are you asking Mr. White Wolf to work services?
Well, I talked to Michelle. Michelle says that he's in between jobs. He does work, but he's in between jobs. He is aware of the child. He is aware of the mother and her issues, and he has not stepped in.
Okay. And so why is he being asked to do drug testing and take an drug and alcohol assessment?
It's standard. If he gets a drug and alcohol assessment and gets passed, then we won't have to do any more drug and alcohol.
Okay. And is it because Ms. Sarmiento's issues that you suspect that Mr. White Wolf might also need assistance with drug and alcohol treatment?
Well, he was recently arrested for possession, so.
Okay, thank you. So at this time is the department asking for service plans for both parents as outlined in your court report be ordered?
Yes, ma'am.
And at this time, does the department do you have plans to follow up with both parents to make sure that they understand what services they have?
Yes, ma'am.
And you haven't been able to locate Ms. Sarmiento, but as soon as you get back in contact with her, you will go over her service plan with her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what about placement? Where is Adelia placed?
She is placed with a foster home in Lubbock.
Okay.
She's doing well. She's adjusting well. She goes to daycare.
Is the foster home related to her?
No. Oh, sorry. Yes. Again, I'm on the wrong case. I'm so sorry.
You want to take a minute to review your court report, please?
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, she is placed with Heaven's side of the family, grandmother, and she's doing really well. She's a very shy child and kind of small, but I think she's adjusting well. She has some little cousins that she can play with there.
Okay. And actually, has she since birth basically lived next to her grandparents?
Yes.
Okay. And so they are long-term caregivers for her. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Have you also been in touch with the tribe?
I haven't, but my supervisor, Luke, has.
Okay. So the tribe is aware of this case. Is that correct?
Yes.
And in fact, are you surprised that they're not here today?
Yes.
Okay. Have they said that they are okay with the placement of the child?
Yes.
Okay. Does the child does Adelia have any medical or other needs that need to be addressed today by the court?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And is the department pretty certain that her current placement is meeting her needs?
Yes.
What about visitation for either parent? Is either parent having visitation?
Not at this time, but as soon as we get in touch with Heaven, we will definitely get some visits set up. And then as soon as I get to talk to Devin in length, we will probably get him some visits set up.
Okay. Is there anything else the court needs to know at this time?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So are you asking that the court continue the department as temporary managing conservator and continue the placement of the child?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, I pass the witness.
All right, thank you. Ms. Gollahue, would it be a contrary to the child's best interest to be returned to either the mother or the alleged father today?
Yes, I believe so. Mom.
That's all right. That's all you need to tell me. Would it be a danger to the child's physical safety to be returned to the mother or the alleged father today?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Barfield, questions?
Do you have any contact for mom at this time?
I personally haven't.
Okay, that's okay. If you do, will you get it to your department attorney or let me know directly so that I may make efforts to contact my client?
Yes.
That's all I have, Judge.
All right, thank you. Mr. Purtle?
Have you got any indication from the mother or the father that they're willing to sign a voluntary relinquishment of parental rights?
No.
I pass the witness.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have further questions for Ms. Gollahue? All right, then, Ms. Ferguson, do you have any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the department rests.
All right, thank you. Mr. Barfield, I assume you have no witnesses? He's muted, but he shook his head yes.
Yes, Your Honor. Sorry.
All right,
No,
Mr.
I
Purtle.
do not have, you were correct. I do not have witnesses.
Mr. Purtle, witnesses.
No witnesses, Judge.
All right, thank you. Then, Mr. Purtle, recommendations?
Your Honor, I believe the child's in a safe and stable environment. I recommend the child remain where the child's at, and that the parents be talked to, like Ms. Gollahue said, in depth about what they want, and if they're willing to sign voluntary relinquishments of parental rights.
All right, okay, thank you. And Casa, anything to add?
Yes, I just recommend that they try to get Adelea registered with the tribe. We had a Teams meeting on Monday, and we spoke to Tessa Loneworth, and she's I guess she's in charge of the cases that come to the tribe. But she did say she was eligible, but I did have a visit with the family on Wednesday, and it was said that Heaven is telling them not to register her because that the tribe will come and take them away from the family, but that's not the case. The tribe said that they are willing to help with any financial needs at placement. So I just recommend them trying to get Adelea registered, and she stays at current placement. And the only concern at the moment that we do have is her sleep schedule. The placement did say that Heaven was giving her melatonin drops. They just don't know how much, that she would sleep all the time with them. And so they just are having a tough time with her sleep schedule and stuff of that sort. So those are the only concerns and recommendations that I have.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gollahue, you had your hand up.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Michelle Lone Wolf has the paperwork, and due to her son being the alleged father and the tribe has him, I think, as the father is going to get her registered with the tribe.
We don't have a father yet. We've got an alleged father.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Okay, I will continue the department as temporary managing conservator, continue the current placement. I'll order the services contained in Ms. Sarmiento's service plan. I will order paternity testing for Mr. White Wolf, subject to the outcomes of that paternity test. If he is in fact the biological father, then I will order the services as contained in his service plan. Not knowing any more than I do at this point, I'll just order that the department and/or St. Francis cooperate with any attempts to have the child registered. And is that with the Wichita tribe? Am I correct there?
Yes,
Yeah.
Your Honor.
Okay, then I'll just order that they cooperate in any attempts to register the child with the Wichita tribe.
And Your
Okay,
Honor, I just wanted to add, and I just know from other cases that typically a parent does have to be the one to sign
Yeah.
that paperwork. So we will
Yeah.
try to facilitate that.
well, and if it's with the father, we're probably putting the cart ahead of the horse till we get that paternity test done. Ms. Gollahue, if you do at some point get to talk to Mr. White Wolf, be sure he's aware that if he does not follow the court order and have the paternity test done, that this court can find that he is in fact the biological father. So a lot of fathers think they can duck out and not risk maybe having to pay child support, but they're not aware that the court can find that they are the father if they don't do the test that's ordered. So be sure he understands that. So,
Yes, sir.
okay, thank you. Our next hearing will be the initial permanency hearing on August 4th, 2023. As far as I know, that will be by Zoom, just like today's hearing, so parties and attorneys can go on the court's online docket a day or two in advance of August 4th to see exactly what time that hearing will take place.
Your Honor, Pamela Ferguson, representing the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. I'm present and ready with Halissa Bird, permanency specialist, and Tippy Watson, supervisor from the department. From St. Francis Ministries. I would call my first witness as
All
Halissa.
right, thank you. Ms. Ferguson, you may proceed.
Ms. Bird, how are you familiar with this case?
I'm the permanency specialist on this case.
And how are where are the children placed?
In the kinship home with paternal aunt.
Okay. And have you filed a court report with this court?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you have any updates since you filed that report?
Not at this time.
Okay. Then let's just talk about Miss Elizabeth Crawford. How is she doing in her services?
She's doing well. She has completed her services and she's continued the individual counseling sessions. Also, she's attended some domestic violence groups. We recommended a certain amount and she's continued to attend. And so she's doing well.
Okay. What is she still working on?
In individual counseling, I know that I've reached out and talked with her counselor, and they're just kind of working on the future plans for when the children are in the home. Also, the domestic violence that occurred about 5 months ago, and just that relationship with her children's father.
Okay. Okay. What about Mr. Dominguez? How is he doing in his service plan?
Mr. Dominguez is still incarcerated. He's been incarcerated since October of 2022. I was able to visit with him in February for a face-to-face visit. The jail doesn't have any services that they can provide while he's incarcerated. However, we are able to send any kind of literature for Mr. Dominguez. He has asked if we could send anything that could be helpful. So I'm gathering up some, basically some kind of anger management and just different things that are kind of self-reflecting.
Okay. And how are the children doing in their placement?
The children are doing well. They're going to school. They're doing, I think, better having visits with mom in the home. I think that's a lot better for the children. But it seems like they're thriving and doing well.
So what is the current visitation?
So we have an FRE schedule and plan that we're following. So currently the children are seeing their mom, basically it's 8 hours a week, but due to the children's schedule and mom's schedule, she's getting to have them twice in a week, sorry. And they're 4-hour visits in the home, unsupervised. And so sometimes I pop in for those visits and they're going well.
And so FRA means family reunification, is that correct?
That's correct.
What's next on the plan?
So next week we have the plan set up for her two daughters to have an overnight and continuing the visits with the other children to be twice a week.
Okay. And do you have any reason to think that won't progress to reunification?
No.
Okay. And what is the ultimate goal date for the FRE plan?
So I believe it's about an 8-week plan. So we do plan to staircase the children back into the home, since there are 6 children, 2 of which are twins and 1 years old. So we plan to place the 2 girls first, and then the 2 oldest boys, and then the twins. And so it's about an 8-week plan.
Okay. What about the children's medical or educational needs? Is there anything that the court needs to know or address today?
No, not at this time. I believe they're all up to date on medical needs. And then educational needs, they're continuing going to school and doing well in school.
Okay. And is the department asking that Ms. Crawford continue with her individual therapy as the reunification plan progresses?
Yes.
And is that intended to ultimately work towards reunification so that she can be safe for the children to come home?
Yes.
Okay. So is the department asking that the court find that there is still a continuing danger for the children at this time, and that Ms. Crawford needs to continue to work the plan?
Yes.
Okay. And is the department asking for this court to find the department continued as temporary managing conservator and the current placement to continue until the family reunification plan can be completed?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I pass the witness.
All right, Mr. Watkins.
Miss Bird, on this plan, it's rather a slow plan of getting the children back to mom. Is that correct?
I believe it's a plan that we generally follow with the amount of children in the home. So I wouldn't
Okay.
say slow, but to progress forward.
So is it like a policy or something that because there are this many children, you slow the plan down?
No, I would not say that. I would say just due to mom needing the beds still in the home. I know that kinship has a few of the beds, so we're working on just making sure we have the correct amount of beds, as well as with mom's schedule, just hoping that staggering the kids in kind of staircase will give mom a better opportunity to be equipped for all of the children.
So has there been some indication that she's not equipped to have all the children?
Not at this time. I know that there's been a few things that she's needing, and so we're just helping get her set up for when all 6 are in the home.
And what kind of things is she needing?
So currently she doesn't have any beds in the home. And I believe 2 of the beds, or I think she said 3 of the mattresses and 1 of the beds is at kinship. So I believe she's going to need at least 4 beds and then another crib.
So the reason she doesn't have beds at home is they went to the kinship placement and she come back. Is that correct?
Not all of the beds, to my understanding. 3 mattresses and 1 actual bed.
Okay. But that's where the children have been sleeping. It is in those beds and or mattresses that are at kinship, but were at her house.
Some of the beds, correct.
Okay. And you just testified that there's continuing danger. What is the continuing danger at this point?
I think at this point, I know mom has stated that in counseling it's been helpful. I know that there is some contact between mom and dad. They both
let me slow you down for just a second. You said mom said in counseling that it's been helpful. That counseling's been helpful?
Yes.
And that's a continuing danger?
No, I was going to say that I know that mom has struggled a lot with the incident with dad. And I know that mom stays in contact with dad. So I believe that's still a concern. So I believe continuing counseling to address that concern is important in this case.
So is it your position or the the St. Francis position that mom and dad should not be married or not be together in any way?
Due to the incident that occurred and dad being incarcerated, I would recommend dad attend services. So yes, at this time.
Okay, but he's incarcerated right now.
Yes.
So it's not like he's going to come walking in and see the children at the house.
When I spoke with him in February, he believed that he should be released within a month or 2. So I'm expecting for his release to possibly be in April, but I have not confirmed that information.
Okay. And is all this reunification plan contingent on him not being in the house?
Yes.
Okay. And does your reunification plan schedule say that anywhere?
Yes.
Where?
In the plan for no contact with Mr. Dominguez at this time.
So at this point, it would be another month before Crawford has any of the children in her house permanently. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
That's correct.
Okay. And then how long would it be until the next set of children came to her house? Another month?
Are you talking about the first set or the second set?
Well, the first set is a month away from today. And the second set is a month after that, correct?
No. So I have the children, it should be an overnight, and then the next week will be a weekend, and then the children will be placed.
Okay, from April 21st to May 19th. Is that not about a month?
I guess so. I would say about 3 weeks. So.
Okay. Or can we agree it's about 2 days shy of a month?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. And then the next one is June 9th, which is about 3 weeks getting the last kids into the house, correct?
Yes.
Is there no way to speed this process up?
I believe we just scheduled the plan as best as we could, to just make the process a lot easier for parent and the children. So that was just kind of the plan we came up with.
Pass the witness.
Mr. Pirtle?
No questions.
All right. Ms. Bird, I've got several questions. I read in the reports that Mr. Dominguez was arrested for possession of controlled substance, unlawful carrying of a weapon, and assault on a family member. Is he awaiting trial on those, as far as you know?
Yes.
Okay. And the assault on the family member, was the victim Ms. Crawford?
Yes.
And I've heard some testimony that they're still having contact. What do you know about that? What's the contact between Ms. Crawford and Mr. Dominguez?
Ms. Crawford has stated that father calls, so Mr. Dominguez calls, and so they have those phone calls. She says that, they do not want to be together, but that he does call about the children. We have asked that we have no contact at this time with Mr. Dominguez, but she has taken those calls and updated him on the children in the case.
Well, I guess I want to be sure I understand. You're saying the Department of St. Francis does not want Ms. Crawford to have any contact with Mr. Dominguez or the children?
The children for Mr.
Okay.
Dominguez.
Okay. All right. Mr. Watkins kind of hit on this, but I need to ask you again. What is the continuing danger of the physical health or safety of the children to be returned to Ms. Crawford today?
I believe.
Let me preface it. That wasn't a fair question. I've heard your testimony that you're going to kind of stair step, bring these kids in slowly, 2 at a time. But what is the actual danger? Let me just tell everybody, I'm thinking legally, I'm thinking I've got to do something today, and I'm thinking about a transition monitored return. So what is the real danger to return the children on a transition monitored return? If you know what legally that means, that doesn't mean they all go home tonight. So if I were to order a transition monitored return, what would be the physical danger to the children?
I guess that there isn't a physical danger at this time.
And if we did a transition monitored return, would that be contrary to the children's welfare?
I believe so.
You believe it would be contrary or would not?
I would probably have to staff with my supervisor.
All right, there's that 4-letter word. Okay, then. All right, Ms. Ferguson, did you have any other witnesses?
Your Honor, can I ask a few questions of my witness?
Sure, absolutely.
Ms. Bird, in the plan that you've described, do you believe that would be in the best interest of the children for Ms. Crawford to continue to work some services, for the first set of children to go home around April 19th?
Yes.
Is that in the best interest?
Yes.
And why is that?
The children have had a hard time kind of transitioning, just even with the visits. I think even just the amount of children in the home, when I do go on the visits, it's a lot. I know Mrs. Crawford has handled it quite well, but I believe having the children physically in the home 24/7 would be better to have the children move in at a certain amount compared to all at the same time.
Okay, and would the transition, would the proposed family reunification plan affect school schedules at all?
No.
Okay. Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I pass the witness.
Okay, anyone else have further questions for Ms. Bird?
Real briefly, Ms. Bird, you said that you want, under questioning from Ms. Ferguson, you said she needs to continue working services. But earlier you said she had completed her services and was doing extra counseling and extra domestic violence support. Is that correct?
I believe Ms. Ferguson mentioned continued services. My stance is continuing individual counseling in the domestic violence groups.
Okay, but she's finished her services, right?
With the counselor, I believe the counselor will like to continue services. So she's completed, the parenting classes and some of the other services, but I believe that the individual counseling would be beneficial to Ms. Crawford at this time.
And Ms. Crawford agrees with you and has done that, correct?
Has done it, and she stated she would continue throughout the case.
Okay. If the children move back to Ms. Crawford in a more expedited, but still stair-stepped version of your plan, would it mess with their school by moving in with her again?
At this time, I'm not sure of that. I would probably have to kind of look at the schedule. I know that they have a pretty complicated school schedule at this time. So
maybe my question wasn't a good question. Would they change schools if they move in with her?
the twins will need to go to daycare. They're currently just being in the home with the kinship aunt. We would have to start daycare and help Ms. Crawford get an appropriate daycare.
Okay.
So
once again, will the children who are in school change schools?
No, the children that are in school would not.
That's the witness.
Okay, anyone else? Questions for Ms. Bird?
No, Judge.
Ms. Ferguson, any other witnesses?
Your Honor, I would like to briefly call Tippy Watson.
Ms. Ferguson.
Okay. Ms. Watson, are you the supervisor on this case?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
And have you also looked at the family reunification plan and been involved in designing it?
Yes, ma'am,
Do you believe it's in the best interest of the children?
I do.
And why is that?
Some of the children have some special needs. Eli, for example, he is autistic, and so his transitioning time needs to be slower and have more stability so that he doesn't have issues with his behaviors on that, which is why we are putting the older children in first. Ms. Crawford has asked us to place the girls' home first so she can rebuild that relationship back to mother-daughter. There has been some problems with the girls and possible coaching and some statements made by them. And the fact that they're not calling Elizabeth mom, they're calling her Elizabeth. And she wanted some extra time to reestablish that relationship with them. And then, of course, two twins in the home will be chaotic at first. So that's why we want to stair-step them.
Okay, and if this court were to order a transitional monitored return along the lines of the family reunification plan that's been proposed, would you have any concerns with that?
No, ma'am, that would be fine because that's the plan we're doing.
Okay, and would you think that's in the best interest of the children?
I do believe a transitional monitored return would be in the best interest of the children.
Okay, Your Honor, I pass the witness.
Okay, Mr. Watkins, questions?
Ms. Watson, you mentioned coaching. That's not coaching by Ms. Crawford, is it?
No, sir.
That's coaching by the placement.
Correct.
Okay. If you're concerned about coaching by the placement for the two, are you not concerned about them coaching the next two younger ones?
That hasn't been seen. It's only been seen with the two girls.
Not feel like it would be better to get the children in more quickly than a month, so that any risk of coaching doesn't occur?
The plan is exactly that, a plan. And so if we see that things are going well, for example, when Eli is placed home and things are going well and there's no problems, then absolutely we'll speed that up.
Pass the witness.
All right, Mr. Purtle.
No questions.
All right. Anyone else have anything further for Ms. Watson? Okay, then, Ms. Ferguson, any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the department rests.
Thank you. Mr. Watkins, any witnesses?
I'd call Elizabeth Crawford. Your Honor, could we ask her to turn off her video so that maybe
Sure.
we don't break up so much?
Yeah. Ms.
Can
Crawford, you
do
can turn
that?
off your video. Maybe that will keep you from breaking up on your audio.
Okay.
Ms. Crawford, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. You've heard what the plan is to reunify your family. Are you happy that you're being reunified?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do you feel like that reunification ought to happen a little faster than what the department wants?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. What is your idea of how they ought to be how you ought to be reunified with your children?
I would like for them to come home at once, but I know they feel differently.
Okay. Can you understand their reasons behind the stair step idea?
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel like you have help through your counselor, through your domestic violence support group? If you need to adjustments, do you feel like you have people there supporting you if you need help?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. And I know you've raised a couple of times the bedding situation. Are you asking that the department be ordered to retrieve the beds as the kids come to you that they're sleeping in, that were your beds prior?
I said yes, sir.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to talk to the judge about on this reunification plan?
No, sir.
Okay. I have one question. Did anyone ever tell you to not talk to me before you sign the reunification plan?
Yes, sir.
And who was that?
My social worker, Jalissa.
Okay.
I had stated to her that I was gonna speak to you about how long it was taking, and she asked that I not until it was fully wrote up and signed.
All right, pass the witness.
Right. Ms. Ferguson, questions?
No questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Purtle?
No questions.
Okay. Mr. Watkins, any other witnesses?
No further witnesses.
Thank you. Mr. Purtle, any witnesses?
No, Judge.
Okay. Ms. Bird, if you'd unmute, give me just a second here. Let me look at what it was. What is the department requesting? Let's assume that Mr. Dominguez were able to bond out or whatever. What is the department requesting as far as any contact between him and the children?
I believe we would like to have Dad, I know he's incarcerated, but drug screen, doing hair strand, and basically start services, and no contact at the beginning until we can assess where Dad's at.
Okay, and you may or may not know the answer to this. I might have to ask Ms. Crawford, but we've established that the assault against family member was against Ms. Crawford. Were the children present when that assault allegedly took place?
No, they were not.
Okay, all right, okay. And are any of these children seeing therapists?
Yes. Ivory and Ailey are seeing a therapist. Hippolito at the beginning of the case was, he just stopped participating. Basically, he didn't like counseling and just wouldn't talk.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, then, if no one else has further witnesses, then Mr. Purtle, recommendations?
Your Honor, I recommend that this free plan, I guess, be implemented. If they could speed it up, that'd be nice. I do recommend a monitored return to placement for the mother, and that the father have no contact at this time.
Okay, thank you. And Casa, anything to add?
Your Honor, Casa, we could recommend that the children be returned to mother at some point. I mean, the staircasing makes most sense, but not I. Casa believes it could be shortened as well. I think mom has done all responsible things she's been asked to do, and I do have concern of placement wanting to keep the kids, and I don't want it to be a problem with the like what Mr. Watkins said, I don't want it to be a problem with the older kids. In Eli's in a different situation, but even if it was the first three and then Eli later and then the twins.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. All right. Here's what I'm going to do today. I feel like I've got kind of limited knowledge on the reunification plan, but plus we've got some time constraints today. But I will continue the partner as temporary managing conservator. I'll order the transition monitored return of the children to Ms. Crawford. I'll order no contact between Mr. Dominguez and the children until further court order. And I'll order, as the children are returned to mother, that the beds that they're sleeping in, that I understand belong to Ms. Crawford, be returned when they are returned. Okay, what I mean by transition monitored return, I've heard some about this family reunification plan. I just want everybody to get together. If y'all can't work out something that's acceptable to both Mr. Watkins and his client and the department in St. Francis, you can ask for a hearing. And I will at that point. I'd want to see the reunification plan and read it before I rule. But if y'all can speed it up a little, that would be fine. I can understand the problems with sending this many kids home at the same time. I wouldn't want that for Ms. Crawford, really. But if you can't come to an agreement, just get me the plan. I'll read it and we'll have a hearing. And then if the court needs to, the court will set the actual terms of the return of all the children. So I'm not trying to push this off on you, but I don't have the plan and don't have time to read it today. But I'll be happy to do that if y'all can't come to an agreement. So I was going to set a final in this case for May 19th, but since we're doing the monitored return, I'll just leave that hearing date set as the next permanency hearing. And again, everyone understand, if you can't work this reunification plan out, let me know and we'll set a hearing for it. So, okay. That will conclude this hearing. For those of you involved, I'll be back here in just a couple of minutes to call another Deaf Smith County case. Permanency review after final order. Ms. Ferguson is with us for the department. CASA is with us, and Mr. Barfield is with us representing the child.
Your Honor, I would call Mr. Hernandez as witness. Please state your name for the record.
Brandon Hernandez.
How are you employed?
With St. Francis Ministries.
And how are you familiar with this case?
I'm the caseworker for Juan.
Okay.
Murillo.
And how old is Juan?
16.
And where is he currently placed?
In health center at an RTC.
And how is he doing?
Juan was doing very well. Recently we've had some behavioral issues, but there's been no really huge concerns that is coming up.
Okay. And I just want to clarify, are you currently driving or are you pulled over?
I am pulled over.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Yes, ma'am.
So since you filed did you file a court report in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
And since you filed the court report, are there any updates that you need to give the court?
Again, it was just the behavioral issues that we've had in the recent week or two from Juan. That's the only updates I really have.
Okay. And so what is the current plan for Juan?
As of right now, Juan has leveled down to moderate. So we are currently exploring options to get Juan out of that RTC. So that's where St. Francis is right now.
Okay. I noticed in the court report that it indicated that you are working on getting documents, birth certificate, social security card, state ID for Juan. What is the plan for that?
Yes, ma'am. So at our last hearing, Juan had a name change from Baby Boy to Juan Murillo. At that time, Juan was sent to a new caseworker. So I just got Juan back about 2 weeks ago. So we have requested those documents by mail. We have not made any progress on that at the moment.
Okay. Do you need any assistance with that?
No, ma'am. We're exploring options. We've sent things off. I don't know what else really we could do.
Okay. But you have obtained the birth certificate, or you need to obtain the birth certificate first. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. That's what we're waiting for. The state says that Juan's name change is not found in the system yet.
Okay. And so you'll explore that for further legal options. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What about PALS? Has Juan started PALS yet, or PAL?
So Juan has participated and completed PALS.
Okay. Good. Is there anything else that he needs to do right now in anticipation of getting older in the system?
The only thing we have planned is getting him a circle of support.
Okay, so has a request already been made to find a moderate level placement for him?
Yes, ma'am. I am in contact with High Plains Children's Home, as Juan wants to stay close to home and close to his siblings. So I feel like the GRO program there, which is the group home setting, would be a good placement for Juan. And he's previously has been placed there, so he knows a lot of the staff members and some of the kids that are still there.
And as far as siblings, does he have any sibling contact at this time?
So he talks to the older sibling. Juan has a phone, and I have approved certain contacts, and some of the contacts are with his two older siblings. We had a visitation scheduled during the transition of different caseworkers. The visitation never happened, so we are again following getting that planned again.
Okay. Is there any concerns on any of his medical or dental or educational needs that the court needs to address today?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Your Honor, at this time I pass the witness.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hernandez, I read in the report that he would like to go with family if anyone would take him. At this time, have you located any family that would be willing to be considered for placement?
So we found an aunt that lives in Killeen, Texas. We explored her option, but we are waiting to see what the home study is going to say on her because she had a lot of previous CPS history.
Okay, but it is in the works just in case.
Yes, yes.
And is Juan aware that you're looking into the High Plains Children's Home where he's been before?
Yes, I've talked to Juan and I explained that I would really like him to be placed there. He would be closer to me, right? Close to his siblings. So he would still be able to maintain those contacts and I would still get to see him in person.
Does he seem to be favorable to going forward with that if it can take place?
Yes, Juan is very interested. He has worked extremely hard to get to that level. When I first got Juan a couple of years ago, he was specialized. And so he's worked very hard with his behavioral, school, and things like that. So he's excited if we can get him somewhere close to home. So yes, I'm hoping High Plains will be the priority.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That sounds good. Okay. Then Mr. Barfield, questions?
I have no questions, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Ferguson, anything further from the department?
No, Your Honor, we would just ask the court to continue the department as permanent managing conservator and continue the placement plan.
Okay, thank you. And Casa, anything to add?
Casa just would like to recommend Juan getting moved from the RTC.
Okay. Okay, then, based on what I've heard, then I will continue the department as permanent managing conservator. As of today, obviously, I'll continue this current placement. But if that High Plains Children's Home placement comes through, I would certainly approve that. So don't feel like you need a court order. Let's just go ahead and get him placed if we can. So, okay, then that will conclude this hearing. And I believe, Ms. Ferguson, as far as Jeff Smith, I believe that's our last case. I've got another Gray County case, but good to see you again, Ms. Ferguson.
Yes, thank you. May I be excused?
Thank y'all, Ms. Watson. Good to see you again, too. I don't get to see you that often anymore.
No, sir, now that I don't have to be in court every time I have a hearing, it's awesome.
Mr. Barfield, I see you all the time, but it's good to see you again, too.
I know. I know.
In the
So
interest of the
have a
Halsey
wonderful
Sergeant
week.
children. You too. We're here on a motion to participate. Mr. Albie's with us for the department. Mr. Pirtle is with us representing Ms. Halsey. Mr. Vandenberg is with us. Mr. Adams has been, once Mr. Pirtle entered appearance, I am signing an order today allowing Mr. Adams to withdraw as Ms. Halsey's attorney. Mr. Pirtle, my understanding, you represent Ms. Halsey, but not Mr. Vandenberg. Is that correct?
That is correct, Judge.
Okay. All right, then. We've got everybody that we need, and I don't have anyone in the waiting room. So, Mr. Albie, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would call Miss Amanda Dyer.
All right.
Judge, if I may, at first, at least my client, as far as we were, well, maybe a misunderstanding. I don't know. She is willing to work the services or what services that the department wants. We'd like to talk about them, but there's no adverse position as far as working the services, Judge, that they.
Okay. Well, we can take up any concerns you have about them, but I'm reading the petition. So what you're telling me is Ms. Halsey is willing to do counseling, rational behavior training, anger control training, and parenting classes?
We would like to, Judge. I would like to ask the worker, can those be taken online? Do we have to travel to Amarillo? But yeah, a few minor details, but yes, Judge.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, let's just see here. Mr. Vanderberg, you've been asked to do the same things as Ms. Halsey. Are you willing to do those services? Go ahead.
As a judge, it's gonna cut into how many hours I can work.
I'm sorry?
It's gonna cut into how much hours I can work.
Well, I don't know. Let's just go ahead and let's talk about the services and how they're offered. That'd be just as quick as trying to guess at it. So
I can ask some questions.
Yeah, you've heard what Mr. Pirtle said and what Mr. Vandenberg said. So if you want to just tailor your questions to deal with those issues, then you can go ahead with Ms. Dyer.
I can do that. Thank you. Ms. Dyer, as an investigator with the Texas Department of Family Protective Services, you're asking that Ms. Halsey and Mr. Vandenberg work some services, correct?
Yes.
And let's start with parenting classes. Is that one of the services you want them to work?
Yes, sir.
And is that service available either locally in Pampa, Gray County, Texas, or online?
I believe both are available. I know we've sent people to the pregnancy support center in Pampa, and they do parenting classes there.
But you also are familiar with some parenting classes that they can take online?
Yes, I believe so.
What's the next service that you're requesting that they perform?
So the anger control training as well as rational behavior training, I'm not sure. They used to be available online, but those are one day, from what I understand, in Amarillo.
Okay. And then some counseling, is that correct?
Yes.
And the department typically sets counseling up with a local provider if at all possible.
Yes, sir.
And if we can't do someone in Pampa, we would make every effort to do a virtual counseling sessions with Ms. Halsey and Mr. Vandenberg.
Yes.
It's not really your expertise as to the set up the services. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. But you're sort of familiar with the things that we do.
Yes.
And you will agree that we will work whatever we can do to limit the time that Mr. Vandenberg and Ms. Halsey have to be away from work.
Yes.
Pass with me, Sean.
All right. Let me just kind of, maybe I can short circuit this a little bit. Mr. Pirtle, your client, Mr. Vandenberg, if I was to order that you complete those services, and if they are offered online, that you can take them online. If you're both agreeable to doing that, we could do that today. And if we find out later that some of them aren't available online, Mr. Pirtle or Mr. Vandenberg, if you want to come back and talk about whether you should have to do them. Otherwise, I'm not in a position today to say if they're not offered online, I'm not going to make you do them. But I'll certainly order today that we do them online if it's possible to do them online. So, Mr. Pirtle, do you have any questions for Ms. Dyer, knowing what I've just said?
Not with what you just said, Judge. I don't have any questions.
All right. Mr. Vandenberg, do you have any questions for Ms. Dyer?
I'm a little confused of why this is going to this, whatever.
I can't hear you.
I'm a little confused of why it's going to these extremes whenever the first case was ruled out that there was no abuse found at all.
Well, if you want to have a hearing, sir, we'll have a hearing and I'll listen to what the alleged abuse is. I may not be willing to do them online if we have to do that, but you've got the right to a hearing. If you want the hearing, let's go forward.
Let's move forward.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I guess we'll just move forward.
Move forward with the hearing? Or you're agreeing to do them online if they're available online?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You'll have the right to come back. If there's something that's not available online, all you have to do is notify my office and we'll set we'll set it for hearing as to why or why not. You can't do them in person. I'm not taking that away from you today. So, okay. Then Mr. Vandenberg has said that that's agreeable to him. Mr. Pirtle, is that agreeable to your client?
Yes, Judge.
All right. Mr. Pirtle, are you in agreement that that's what's best for the children?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. All right, then. Then I will order that Ms. Halsey and Mr. Vandenberg complete the services that have been detailed today, but I'll set them out again: individual counseling, rational behavior training, anger control training, and parenting classes. I'll order that they be allowed to take those classes online if they're available from any source. If they're not available, then I'll order that they still need to do them, even if it has to be in person, but with the understanding that either mother or Mr. Vandenberg can ask the court to set another hearing to discuss that matter. I'm not ruling that out for either Mr. Vandenberg or Ms. Halsey today. So, all right, if there's nothing else, then Mr. Albee, do we want to set a compliance hearing?
Judge, I would ask that you set one 30 to 45 days out.
Okay. What about May 3rd? That's my first available day.
That sounds appropriate to me.
Okay, then I will set a compliance hearing for May 3rd, 2023. That will be by Zoom, just like today's hearing. So parties and attorneys can go on the court's online docket a day or two in advance to see exactly what time we'll have that hearing on May 3rd. Mr. Vandenberg, since you don't have a lawyer, a compliance hearing is just to come back and see how you and Ms. Halsey have how you're doing on the services that have been ordered today. Okay, that was our last hearing for the day. So we will stand in recess. Everybody have a good weekend.
Thank you,
You
Judge.
too, Judge. Thank you. Good to see you,
Good
Judge.
to see you too, Mr. Pearl.